Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study the human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
And I'm Dr. Ross Barnett, paleogeneticist interested in Ice Age cats.
And today we are reviewing the BBC series Ghosts, and in particular, I think we're mostly reviewing a character, kind of probably like when we reviewed Ross from Friends. We are reviewing the character Robin, who is some sort of caveman ghost on the BBC series Ghosts from 2019 to 2023. I think we can talk generally about the series, generally about the character, and I think we also all watched Season 1, Episode 5, Moona Stone, which features Robin heavily, and we can talk about that in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So, does somebody want to sort of summarize the series, the concept of the series, and maybe summarize the episode Moona Stone?
Yeah, I can do that. Well, first of all, big shout out to my sister Lexi, who recommended this series to me because we were looking for something to watch.
Shout out to you, Ross, for recommending this to me, because I think you told me about this about a month ago, and I watched the last episode last night. I finished the whole series. It's so good.
I essentially know what I'm going to do all next week.
Yeah, we're loving it. So we're about halfway through, I think, season 2 now. We kind of watch it as a family, but it's just really fun. So it's by the same people that do Horrible Histories. If you've ever watched Horrible Histories, it's the same people that do that. If you've ever watched the Paddington films, it's some of the writers of the Paddington films as well, which are kind of universally beloved. And it's just got lots of really great, it's kind of a who's who of British comedy. You'll see everyone that you know in there. And so the premise is that Alison and Mike are a kind of young couple who are accidentally inherit Button House, which is a big kind of rambling, falling apart mansion in the countryside. But what they don't realize when they move into it is that it's full of ghosts from kind of every period of history. So there's a kind of lascivious Tory politician who died in a kind of self-pleasuring incident, who's a fantastic character. There's Pat, a Cub Scout leader who's got an arrow through his neck, which kind of tells you how he died. There's Lady Button, who is a kind of grey lady who was pushed out of a window by her evil husband. There is Mary, who was burnt at the stake as a witch. There is... Who am I missing out now? Oh, there's the captain, who's a World War I captain. And then there is Thomas, who's like what kind of period? A kind of Georgian, Byronic kind of poet. And then there is Kitty, who is, I think, supposed to be like a Georgian lady. And there is Robin. And then there's a whole bunch of other ghosts that we meet at various points.
Did you mention Humphrey Bone, the headless guy?
Sorry. Sir Humphrey, who is mostly just a head. It's all the kind of classic ghost trope. So he's a kind of headless. I think he's supposed to be a kind of from around the time of the Civil War. I think he's a Cavalier kind of character. But yeah, he was beheaded. We find out later how that happened, but he was beheaded. And the conceit of the show is that where you die, all these people died in Button House, that's where you end up haunting, and you can't leave that space, essentially. Though, I mean, how that works with kind of boundary lines, I don't know. And so the first inhabitant of the earliest kind of ghost is Robin, who is, I think, a kind of Neanderthal character. He speaks in classic kind of caveman style, but he's just incredibly funny. He also has... So the ghosts can't affect their environment apart from a few things. So Robin has the ability to affect lights. The politician can move things. If you've ever seen the film Ghost, it's a bit like that. The subway ghost that can actually move things. He has to concentrate really hard every time he has to move something just a tiny amount. Mary can make people smell burning because she was burnt as a witch. But yeah, the series essentially starts off with them kind of moving into the house, being unaware of the ghosts, but the ghosts are aware of them. But then the politician, who I always get their names mixed up, but his name is not Jeffrey. It's
Julian Fawcett.
Julian, yeah. So Julian, the politician, summons all his energy, like the day after Alison and Mike first move in, to push her out of a window when she's leaning out of it, because they don't want, in a kind of Beetlejuice way, they don't want any living people in their house. But unfortunately, a side effect of her falling out and hitting her head as she hits the ground is that now she can see the ghosts. So she has to live with all these really annoying characters who all have their own kind of quirks and idiosyncrasies. And so one of the main ghost characters is Robin, who's I think a Neanderthal. And in the episode Muna Stone, lots of things happen that kind of feed into the whole kind of narrative arc. So their Button House is falling apart. Alison and Mike are trying to turn it into a hotel or something that will generate them an income. And so they're doing lots of repairs. They're renting it out to kind of wedding venues and period productions for television and film. There's always pigeons in the house because it's full of holes, which is very funny. And so the kind of opening scene is Mike fixing the door and saying we should celebrate that now we've fixed the door and we should have some prosecco. And Alison tells him, well, we were saving the prosecco for when the woodwork treatment is finished. And as Mike opens the bottle, of course, the cork flies out, knocks a hole through the rotten door, which is full of woodworm, and then a pigeon immediately kind of gets in, which is great. So the kind of main thrust of the story is that they didn't realize they had any neighbors, but one of them, who's called Barkley, just like walks right in. Some of his dogs kind of run through the open door, and he follows in straight after them. And it's a very good caricature of kind of standard English upper classes. They just feel like they can walk anywhere, do anything. Kind of laws and rules are for the little people. And Barkley is a terrible character. He's their neighbor. He lives about a mile away. He is incredibly rich. He's incredibly posh. And they find out through talking to him that he actually owns the local village. That's his. He owns that. And also he owns the strip of land that they have to cross over to get into Button House. So he kind of sniffs a business opportunity. If they're going to turn Button House into a hotel, people will have to cross his land, and that's something that he needs to get sorted out. So throughout this sort of initial interaction, what happens is he sort of eventually invites himself round to dinner that night for them to kind of get to know each other and to smooth over the kind of whole issue of this land boundary. And while this is going on, all the ghosts are kind of doing their thing. One of the dogs starts barking in a weird way, and this triggers Robin, who makes it known to the group that tonight is going to be a lunar eclipse, and that is very special for him and his people, who kind of have who kind of look on the moon as a deity, essentially. And there's some good banter about how Robin, speaking in kind of standard caveman language, says, "Me speak good," and he kind of infects all the others with his bad grammar, including Thomas the poet, who gets very upset. And we discover that Button House, before it was Button House, was the site of a kind of megalithic structure. And I think it's Julian that says, yes, it's amazing to think that there was these standing stones here, just like Stonehenge. And Robin gets very upset and says, "No, Stonehenge copied," which is a good point if he's a Neanderthal. And so we kind of get quite. He doesn't normally speak a lot in the episodes, but he does have a lot of character.
Okay.
And so we get a bit of insight into his kind of religious, kind of cultural beliefs. So he says that they have to worship the moon during this eclipse. Thanks be to the Muna, which is a good light in the sky, which is great. And then it kind of cuts to Barkley turning up, and he turns up with his wife, who's called Bunny, because of course she is, who's very clearly alcoholic and has driven there and crashed into their fountain. in the driveway. And so their plan is to cook them something nice, all they have in the house, because they're like cash poor, trying to fix up Button House. They have like a microwave lasagna in the freezer, and they decide this won't do to entertain their very posh guests. So Mike goes out and shoots a pheasant in the ground under instruction from the captain, who tells him where to shoot. And so they kind of pluck the pheasant, which is a bit gory. It kind of bleeds all over Alison's jumper. And they put Mary, the woman who was burnt as a witch, in charge of looking after this pheasant in the oven. Which, I mean, throughout the series, Mary is portrayed as slightly dim, or in fact very dim, and not very intelligent. So obviously that goes wrong, and the pheasant gets totally destroyed. And while they're trying to have this dinner, I think they basically just eat bread and drink wine. But the moonstone ritual starts, and so all of the ghosts kind of are shouting and chanting as they kind of walk around the dining hall, while Alison is trying to listen and have conversation with her dinner guests, and she ends up shouting just to get over the noise of the ghosts, and of course nobody else can see them, so it just makes her look totally deranged. And Mike, has explained earlier that she's been acting strangely because she hit her head, which is very true. And so she sends everyone out to look at the fuses, because they have an excellent selection of fuses in the house. And as soon as all the living people leave the room, she kind of shouts at the ghosts and tells them to stop what they're doing, which is upsetting because Robin says that, but moon eclipse very important. And the captain agrees and says, he deserves respect. And then tells him to shut up straight away. So yeah, it's quite difficult for Robin, having been dead and a ghost for so long, that there's not really any remnants of his culture left. The kind of worship of the moon is all that there is. So Alison kind of gets everyone out of the room except for Robin and takes them upstairs to watch Friends on DVD, which they all seem to love, particularly Thomas, who identifies with Joey, and the captain, who identifies with Chandler, which is really quite funny. While Mike and Barclay are in the cellar looking at all the fuses amongst the plague pit dead, so that we don't often see them, but the cellars are full of dead plague victims. They have a discussion about the land issue that they're having, and Barclay says, "How about I'll sell it to you for, let's say, 20." And Mike, obviously being a reasonable, normal person, assumes that 20 means £20 and is delighted, and they shake on it. But Barclay, being kind of an upper-class idiot, of course, 20 for him means 20,000. So Mike has essentially promised to pay Barclay £20,000. And when they're down to their last microwave lasagna dinner, they don't have that kind of money. And so he tries to explain to Alison that they've had this misunderstanding. And Alison has the great idea that after dinner, when they're playing poker, she can maybe win this money back by using the ghosts to tell them what the other person's cards are. But because they're so engrossed in Friends, the only ghost she can get to help her is Mary, after having ruined their dinner. But Mary, being a kind of late medieval peasant woman, can't read or count much higher than 3. And so they end up losing hundreds of pounds as well.
This is the funniest joke in the entire series, and I just want to read Mary's description word for word, okay?
Yeah, do it.
Because I think this is the joke that made me and Aurora realize that we were going to finish this show in a few weeks. Mary looks at the guy's cards and she says, yeah, there's a person whose blanket is also a person, but it's upside down and be like they've had a quarrel. There's a number more than 3, but with a shape that's like a loaf, but it's on its side on the end of a wrong stick.
Yeah. So
I spent a long time trying to figure out exactly what cards he was holding.
What did you think?
I don't think it's possible.
I assumed it was like a spades, like a face card of spades was my guess.
Well, I assumed she's talking about 2 different cards. I assumed he's got a face card because I think they're playing Texas Hold'em, so I think they're holding 2 cards. So right. I think he's holding 1 face card and 1 card that's a number more than 3, and it has to be either a spade or a club because
Yeah.
it's at the end of a wrong stick, but I don't know which one of those is more loaf-shaped on its side.
True. Yeah, that's really, really funny. And so that's it. They've lost. They now owe Barclay £20,000 for the land and also several £100 from the poker. And Bunny is very drunk.
I think it was double or nothing. I think they owe £40,000.
Oh yeah, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, so it's £40,000 plus all the cash they lost. And so they are really kind of in trouble. But then Julian, the kind of, I don't know what would be the best word to describe him. The lecherous politician. That's it. He sort of has remembered Barclay from his life, and how boring he was, how rich he was, and how he loved the sound of his own voice. Essentially, like Julian himself. And he also remembers that he's got a secret Fiji bank account, obviously for some kind of nefarious business dealings. And he tells Alison this. So as they're leaving, and Barclay says, "Just pay me whatever you want, check or banker's draft is fine." She says to him, "I'd like to do it by bank transfer. And would you like that in your current account or in your Fiji account?" And you can sort of see him just freeze and kind of the cogs start turning in his mind that, uh-oh, she knows about the Fiji account. And so he says,
and Bunny says, "What Fiji account?" So his wife doesn't even know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The wife doesn't know. So that's clearly getting him into potential trouble. And so he says, "You know what? Let's just forget about it. Let's just be friends," which is nice. And so they leave, and they've essentially, despite how awful it's been, the dinner party has been a success because they've now got, for nothing, access to their own house from Barclay, which is great. And we, sort of Robin is still pretty sad about how everyone's kind of abandoned his Moonstone ceremony for watching episodes of Friends. And Pat, who's the kind of, he's the kind of heart of the group. He's the scout leader. He's just very, very nice and positive and enthusiastic. He kind of talks to Robin to try and make him feel better. And I wrote down what he says because it's quite nice. So what Robin says is, "Before you was Muna, before house was Muna. Everything come, everything go, but always there, Muna." So it's really, because he's, about the passage of time, everything essentially has changed. There's nothing left of the presumably kind of Pleistocene landscape that he lived in that he would recognize, except for the moon, which is quite sweet. And Pat kind of recognizes this and says, it's the only thing that's been here as long as you have. So they ask for a favor, which is that they take the sofa out. Alison and Mike take the sofa out for the ghosts so they can sit and be like the beginning of Friends. They put the sofa in front of their fountain and watch the moon. And Robin kind of does his special skill of switching off the lights remotely, which is great. And that's where it ends. Oh, they also Alison tries to teach Mary how to play cards at the kitchen table, which kind of goes maybe as well as you'd expect. There's some more great descriptions. Yeah, which is great. And then at the end it's them all sitting on the sofa watching the moon, just like Friends. And Thomas, who's terribly in love with Alison, tries the Joey line on her and asks how are you doing, which is quite funny as well. And that's it. So it's a really smart, funny, clever, and warm and sitcom. And yeah, it's definitely. I'm kind of very thankful that my sister recommended it to me. It's sad that I've kind of come to it so late.
Yeah, I wish it was still going.
Well, there is an American version, and I think versions in 3 or 4 other countries. If you want to risk it, probably not worth it.
I think one of my favorite lines was when Mary burnt the pheasant. And so she's like, "Didn't you smell it burning?" And Mary's like, "It always smells like burning. I always smell burning."
Yeah.
Sad. It was really funny. It's really cute. I like Robin as a character. Like when I first started watching it, I kind of thought, like, how is he going to be developed into an interesting character? But he is. He definitely is.
Yeah, he's really fun. And he gets to do quite a lot because he's one of the few ghosts that has an actual power in that he can affect the electricity.
Yeah, and he's learned quite a few things, right? Like, so he plays chess, and he always wins chess. I quite like that when he was.
He's probably the smartest there.
Yeah, he was playing with. Was it the captain or something? He was playing with it, right?
He plays chess with Julian all the time.
Julian, instead of moving the pieces, he can't, right? He doesn't have that ability, so he just goes like a dunk, and shows where he would go. And it seems so silly, but then like he goes like a dunk, and then Julian's like, fine, we'll do 20 out of 20, or best out of 20. It's like, obviously he's been losing the entire time. Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah.
And then also at some point in the series, Allison introduces him to crosswords so that he can play a game on his own, and he gets really into crossword puzzles.
Yeah,
Aww.
and he's good at them.
Yeah, I can't wait to keep watching. I'm flying to Canada on Saturday, so I'm going to try and download them if I can. Bring them on the plane.
Cool. Yeah, there's lots of, I don't know how far you're along, so no spoilers, but there's lots of good guest characters as well. So Jennifer Saunders is one guest character. And yeah, lots of others. If you've kind of spent any time watching British comedy, you'll see faces that you recognize.
What can we say about Robin as a character then? Let's go over the things we can. And I think I've probably watched farther than everybody else here because, like I said, I just finished the whole series. So I don't know if you care if I spoil it for you, but we get the thing about the show is we get a little bit of each character's story revealed very slowly over time.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we don't get the full picture of any character until the 5th season. So there's little bits that we can talk about later on that'll reveal a little bit more about Robin's backstory. But we could start with, what is he? Is he a Neanderthal? Because he's pretty Neanderthal coded in his appearance. But other than that, the consensus online seems to be that he's less than 40,000 years old. So what can we use to decide what he actually is?
I mean, I just assume that he's like whatever they want him to be. So he looks like a Neanderthal. He's clearly got the brow ridges, but he speaks English pretty well. He's very smart. He has a big brain. Again, that's a kind of another Neanderthal trait. But yeah, I don't know if we see anything that would definitely say that he is Homo sapien rather than Neanderthal.
I don't think so. I mean,
we never see him with any kind of lithics that would place him.
No.
We have his clothes. His clothes are pretty basic. Like, he doesn't have finely tailored clothes. And upper Paleolithic humans in Europe had sewing needles, and we assume that they had like clothes with like sleeves or pant legs, right? He just has hides draped over him and then sort of hides wrapped around his wrists and ankles, sort of as like leg and arm warmers.
He doesn't have any beadwork or kind of personal jewelry, which would have been kind of common in upper Paleolithic humans.
Mm-hmm. And he's got the classic caveman hairstyle, which I've been actually working on a short video piece about, which maybe I'll post on the channel eventually when it's done.
Yeah, that sounds
He's
awesome.
got just messy hair and a long beard. Although the funny thing is, did you notice he doesn't have a mustache? I don't know if it's to imply that his beard only grows below his chin, or if he actually shaves his mustache into like an Abraham Lincoln style beard.
I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I mean, he uses his mouth because he doesn't speak that much, so his facial expressions are quite important. So I could see them not wanting a dense beard or anything to hide that, right? Because his mouth is quite important in showing his emotions.
Yeah.
So maybe that was a costume choice.
Yeah, the costume choice might also have to do with differentiating him with Humphrey, because the same actor plays both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
And Humphrey has a sort of short beard with like a sort of goatee kind of beard. And so if they both had a full beard,
and
it
a
might
mustache.
Yeah, and they might have looked a little too similar if they didn't do that, maybe.
Well, I had no idea they're the same person.
Well, here's a question for both of you. How long did it take, or did you yet realize that the plague ghosts in the basement are played by the same actors as the upstairs ghosts?
I did not realize.
Pretty much straight away.
Fine.
I think we were in season 2 or 3 before we realized that. But I'm not as familiar with these actors, though. I know Simon Farnaby from Detectorists, which is another show that we should cover. I think as when we were looking at his character that he plays as a plague ghost, we were like, is that the same guy? And then we realized actually, they're all the same actors.
Yeah, he's got very distinctive eyes, Simon Farnaby, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think so Martha Howe Douglas, who plays Lady Button and one of the plague ghosts, she's also one of the writers as well. I recognized her, and then it kind of twigged with the plague ghosts. Yep. But what's difficult is for the men, is they have, the plague ghosts are all, I think, clean shaven, whereas the ghost characters all have facial hair of one sort or another. So Thomas, apart from Thomas, but the captain has got like a military moustache. Sir Humphrey has got the kind of Cavalier style King Charles sort of beard, and obviously Robin's got a big kind of caveman beard as well. And Pat, I guess he's got a moustache as well, doesn't he? I think
so.
Yeah.
Also, and his plague ghost character has, I think, a beard, and then Julian also is clean shaven upstairs, but his plague ghost character has kind of a big bushy tuft of a chin beard. So they've sort of flipped the facial hair between every character.
Yeah.
Are they doing that just to save on actors?
I actually read that in the initial conception, there were supposed to be hundreds of ghosts in the house that were all played by the same actors, and then they sort of toned that down because it would be too complicated production-wise.
But yeah, they're the writers as well, so the kind of ghosts are the writers as well, so they just thought, that's a good part, I'll have that one as well. Just add it to the list. But yeah, the Plague Pit, it's not immediately clear when you first start watching it why there's so many ghosts in the cellar where the fuses are, but then later on we discover that it's actually built on a plague pit, and so these are all the kind of plague victims.
They have the pussy bulbous things too, the
buboes.
Yeah, kind of gives it away too.
And then at the end of season 1 and the beginning of season 2, we've got this little cameo of archaeology because they're doing some renovations in the basement and discover human skeletons who are the skeletons of the plague victims. And then they have to call in an archaeologist, and of course their development has to halt, which costs them money because they're doing an archaeological assessment. And I thought was really interesting to have the ghosts of the people the archaeologist is digging up standing around him, watching him dig them up, and they're commenting and they're trying to identify who is who amongst their own skeletal remains, which was a really interesting concept, right?
Oh, yeah. Could you imagine dropping the skull or something in front of the person?
Next time you're on a dig, just imagine that they're watching over your shoulder.
They're watching me. Sorry.
I mean, it's an interesting perspective to think about things that way. It very quickly for me in archaeology got to very routine. Like the first couple of times you find something, you're like, wow, people were here 100,000 years ago. And then by the next year, it's like, oh, we got more tools. These are 300,000. Put that in the bag. Keep moving on. You don't really necessarily think about it too much all the time. So sometimes you need that sort of reminder about that connection.
My first day, it was in Greece, in Stabalia in Greece, and we excavated a grave and we were camping, and I think I had heat stroke or something. So I was in my sleep, but I had like a anxiety nightmare thing. So I was awake, but I was still dreaming. I thought that the ghost of the farmer was coming after me, and there was geese even. Like they had a pen of geese and they were all squawking, and to me they were squawking at the ghost coming. Like I don't know what, it was this weird like wake dream that I had. It was terrifying.
That does sound pretty scary.
But other than that, I've been fine.
Well, it's an interesting concept to have a caveman ghost, and I think that's why they wrote it in. I think that I read something about how they realized when they were coming up with concepts for ghosts that like the whole lore of ghosts, I guess at least in England, only goes back to the Tudors. You never have a ghost older than that. All your ghosts are these,
Well, I mean, as somebody who's just finished reading a really cool book called The Natural History of Ghosts, I would argue that certainly there's some, I mean, what can you say? They're not real, but there are people who claim to have seen Roman ghosts.
Wait a minute, Ross. Are we taking a stand on this podcast? Are we saying scientifically ghosts are not real?
Well, never say never, but I think they're nebulous at best. It can't be assessed with standard scientific tools.
I think they're a lot like Bigfoot in that you can look at the way it's distributed and realize, oh, this is cultural. This is obviously a result of the culture of the people creating it, because of the fact that ghosts focus on certain time periods and you don't see ghosts from other time periods.
Yeah.
They're always special, fancy people. You don't see ghosts of, just a regular poor person who has no, special power or thing based on their position in life, right?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, so going back to the Roman ghosts, so it's quite a famous case of a guy, a well-respected and pillar of the community kind of person who claimed to have seen in New York Roman centurion ghosts, so like Roman soldiers marching along in a very old part of York. And what was confusing to him at the time and what he reported was that they didn't have any feet. Like the ghosts themselves ended at floor level, just kind of mid calf. And he kind of reported this, and it was quite odd. It was only after kind of later kind of discussion and reading into the place where he saw it that they realized that actually there was a Roman road underneath the kind of ground level of the place where he saw it. And so the kind of classic explanation is that these ghosts were following the original Roman road, and that's because the current level of the building was above kind of their kind of calf level. That's why they appeared to be cut off below the knee, because they were still following the original Roman road.
Ghosts bring up so many interesting metaphysical questions that don't get explored as much as I want them to, because the ghosts are stuck at the level where they could have walked in their life, but still relative to Earth, because Earth is moving through space. Why are they stuck to, why is their location relative to Earth? What does the Earth have to do with their metaphysical location?
They still are affected by gravity, even though they're dead.
Because it's the stones of the road that were haunted, and so that's what they're tied to.
So there's a relationship with the physical spirit of the stones that they interact
and this
with.
This is something that's really interesting that they it kind of leads into classic ghost lore. So one of the common things, which is in the series Ghost as well, is that they can walk through walls and through kind of physical kind of barriers. And one of the explanations feeding off from this Roman centurion sighting is that, well, they're following the path of the house or the building as it used to be. So when they walk through walls, it's actually because there used to be a door there, or there used to be a kind of passageway there, and through remodeling, it's disappeared. But the ghosts are still following, because that's quite a common ghostly trope is that they kind of disappear through walls when people see them.
There's a later episode that you probably haven't seen yet where they're kind of making fun of how the rules of ghosts make no sense. And I think it's a flashback to when one of the ghosts had just died and was just learning how to be a ghost. And it might have been Julian, he would walk through a chair, but then sit down in the chair. And then another ghost is like, yeah, it doesn't really make any sense, does it?
Yeah.
Is this book that you're talking about, Ross, is that the Roger Clark or whatever?
I think so, yeah. A Natural History of Ghosts. It's quite an interesting read. I enjoyed it. I mean, it's something I've always read about, ever since I was little. I've always been interested in the kind of spooky things, paranormal.
Yeah, me too. I like it.
I think it's fairly common for people that end up in science. Certainly people I've spoken to. Like when you're young, you're interested in the big mysteries, and as you get older, you realize that actually a lot of the time it's just the kind of fallible nature of human perception. But you're still interested in mysteries. Just you decide to focus on more tractable ones.
Yeah, I mean, even what goes into human perception is.
Yeah, sometimes you just get into real science, but then you wish you could keep doing Bigfoot research or something like that, which is...
Don't we just?
Maybe we'll do a Bigfoot movie next. I got a Bigfoot movie I want us to do.
Okay,
I would
great.
go on a ghost hunt anytime, like one of those, where they go into the closed down asylum or something to put up cameras everywhere and chased around, and you never actually see anything, but they're screaming all the time. I do that in a heartbeat.
I've been on a few. So when I lived in Edinburgh, so Edinburgh itself is a very haunted city, allegedly. But parts of it are, so one of the tours we went on,
Oh yeah, tour. I've done tours, but
Edinburgh's built on sort of different levels. So there's like the kind of lower part and the upper part of Edinburgh. And between them, there used to, in medieval times, there was all these buildings kind of between the layers, but they've all been kind of blocked off and you can't access them now. So Mary King's Close is the sort of famous one, which was blocked off in kind of medieval times when there was plague around. But you can now go on kind of tours down there, and it's meant to be very haunted, and it is very spooky. But
it is,
I didn't see anything. And
No,
also
me
places like Greyfriars Cemetery, it's supposed to have lots of ghosts.
My
and
favorite
things like
cemetery
that.
in the whole world.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, that one has that poltergeist that's supposed to be like, you have to, people who take tours that go in there have to get danger pay. You have to sign a waiver. Because the poltergeist is not to hurt people.
I can't remember what his name is, but he's supposed to be a very bad dude.
Yeah, like a war general who tortured soldiers and stuff. POW. Like
Or
that.
was he a judge?
Oh, something. I just remember, so we went on that tour, and so we all go into this mausoleum
Sir George
beside
Mackenzie.
them. Yes, that's it. And so we're all going in there, and they're like, before we go in here, I have to say, nobody can use a vape. Like, and nobody please vape in here. And they're like, it's not for any reason except for that, like, we don't want a stampede starting because some, like, apple scented specter like approaches somebody.
Because they saw an apparition and smelled some blueberry tobacco.
Yeah. Apparently they'd had that before, right? Like somebody just signed the back with not even meaning to do it, but just with a vape, and then all of a sudden it just causes chaos in this small haunted room because
everyone's primed.
Yeah, everyone's primed.
This is one of the things that drove me crazy about this show, is because throughout the whole series, they're like, we can't let anybody know there's ghosts here because we'll lose out on money because no one will want to come to our haunted hotel. And I'm like, you can make so much money these ghosts.
Yeah.
You can get photos of Lady Button because she can appear on camera. You can, nobody else can consistently get photos. You can have objects move and no one will be able to find the strings. You can have the light bulbs flicker and there's nothing wrong with the electricity. Like, they could make so much money with haunted house tours, and they wouldn't even have to fix up the house because the creepier the house, the better, right?
Yep, exactly.
But then they do like they have the local ghost people in. That's one of the story arcs in one of the earlier seasons. And of course, it goes horribly wrong because the ghosts are incapable of behaving themselves. And so they end up, Alison ends up having to fake being a ghost herself. And that kind of ruins it.
And gets caught, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she gets the ghost mad at her, I think. At first, she wants them to not reveal themselves, and then she wants them to reveal themselves, and they're upset and they don't want to do it. So she's trying to pretend there's a ghost, and the ghosts are actively trying to stop her from making it look like there are ghosts.
But yeah, back to Robin. I definitely think he's a Neanderthal. But then the other things that kind of suggest he might be Homo sapiens. So he talks about there being the standing stones where Button House was, and obviously most of the megaliths, including Stonehenge, which was copied from them, are much later. So Bronze Age, Iron Age is late Neolithic at the earliest, and all kind of modern human things. But I was reading into this. There is sort of evidence for Neanderthal kind of lithic building, essentially. So there's a site in France, you guys will know about this, I'm sure already, called Brunequel, which is a deep cave which has stalactites and stalagmites, so that the kind of limestone kind of stone structures inside the cave have been kind of collected and turned into quite a big 1 foot tall circular structure of unknown purpose, but in a time period when only Neanderthals were around in Europe, so it must have been them.
Yeah, I know about that paper. That's a pretty recent finding, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or at least recently reported
5-10
on.
years.
Yeah. I think we've probably talked about this before, but there's probably like a bias in researching Neanderthal art or spirituality just because we assumed they didn't have it up until the last few decades. When we start looking for it, we start finding it everywhere.
Yeah, it's that thing. It just gets assumed, it's symbolic and arty, it must be modern humans.
Well, it's one of those things where if you believe it, then you believe the evidence and you see support for it. But if you don't believe it, then you see the opposite, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. We have some clues about Robin from later episodes, and I'll reveal a few things to you, trying not to spoil too much for you, if you don't mind. We learn in a later episode that he's actually perfectly fluent in French, even though his English is pretty rough.
Okay.
And he learned French from Humphrey Bones' wife, who wasn't happy about her arranged marriage and refused to learn English. And so he had a special relationship with her, even though she couldn't see him at all. He was sort of took to her. And he also knows a little bit of Russian. We learn in that episode. He's kind of rusty with his Russian. We don't get an explanation for that.
Wow.
But it's also suggested in that episode that English is his first language. They say, you know French better than you know your first language. And so this kind of implies that he didn't originally have a language. And he maybe came from a group that didn't have language yet, which again implies he's a Neanderthal, but also language is probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years old. I think most of us probably agree, right? It's hard to say when language first emerges, but I think Neanderthals must have had some sort of language-like communication system, if not a full-blown language, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
I
would
think
say
so.
Maybe they spoke the Queen's English.
Just coincidentally, all the words happen to be the same, like the like that Australian language where the word for dog is dog.
Yeah, just convergence, because English is the natural language.
They'd love that so much.
We learned about English cavemen last week on the SNL sketch.
Yeah.
I think another one of my favorite, before I forget, it has nothing to do with Robin or archaeology or anything, but one of my other favorite points of this was when the gray lady was confessing finally that her husband was the one that pushed her out the window because she was so embarrassed about it. She wanted to keep it secret. And so she finally admitted to them that that's what happened. And then the ghosts that were obviously older than her are looking at her and
Yeah.
they're kind of nodding, acting, like she says this big secret. Then they're like, yeah, we did watch that happen. We know.
Yeah.
Another thing we learn about Robin, just as a sort of throwaway joke, is that he walked from continental Europe. So obviously he got there before Doggerland flooded, when there was no channel between England and France. There's another joke where they're talking about potential relationships between members because obviously it's a family house. Allison is related to Lady Button because she inherited the house from her descendants, from Allison's ancestors and Lady Button's descendants. And they're talking about the potential relationships between other members in the house. And I think it's Pat that says, we're probably all related if you go back far enough. And Robin says, yeah, you all come from me and my sister.
My sister.
Oh, dear.
And that implies he's a modern human if he is the ancestor of everybody else in England, right?
Well,
If it's,
not really.
Not
it's true.
necessarily, though.
Because we all non-Africans have Neanderthal ancestry a little bit. So
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so it could be.
I would say it maybe argues against him being a Neanderthal because we know from genetic work that Neanderthals were quite good at kind of avoiding close relationships with in their partners. They kind of moved long distances, or the males moved long distances to find new groups to interbreed with. So there's a site in Spain where they looked at the genetics of a whole bunch of Neanderthals who died at the same time and saw that while all the females were genetically closely related, all the males were quite distinct and had come from different populations. So that the males were kind of swapped in essentially to ensure that there was no kind of brother-sister issues. Although having said that, another genetic study from a hominid from Denisova shows that it's either kind of uncle, niece, or kind of about 2 degrees of separation mating event that were their direct ancestors. I can't remember the exact details of that.
Oh, I don't know about that one. I know about the Denisova Neanderthal Denisovan hybrid, first generation. That one's very well known.
There's another individual. Let me just find that. Lots of free answers researches. Okay, here we go. So this is from... from Denisova, a Neanderthal woman. They discovered from her genetics she was highly inbred, so she could have been the offspring of half-siblings who shared the same mother, or it could have been an uncle and niece or aunt and nephew, grandparent and grandchild, or double first cousins, so the offspring of two siblings who married siblings. And that came out in 2013.
I don't know which one's the least awkward of that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, none of it's good.
I like the implication in that they were married. That's what you said, right?
That's in the BBC article. That's the best case scenario.
Oh. We have another episode later on in the series where we get another Robin heavy backstory where he's watching TV and there's a news clip where they're talking about a documentary that's going to air later that day where they've discovered an ice mummy and done a facial reconstruction, and they've made a documentary about it, and Robin realizes he knows that guy.
Oh dear.
I'm looking forward to watching this.
He spends the rest of the episode trying to convince the other ghosts that he knows him, because Robin is pretty known for his wild stories that nobody believes, right?
Yeah.
And nobody believes, but he's constantly trying to remember, so he's like, okay, his name was Hat. But that was before hats. Yeah. I guess that tells us something about language, because if he's got a name, they must have a language, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's probably just that the ghost didn't consider it a true language because it wasn't English or French.
I guess, though, yeah. He also had a big tattoo on his back that looked like an X, and he traded him a tool for some furs. And so the furs he was wearing, actually, he traded from this guy. And the tool was a special tool, which was a stone tied to a stick. And its purpose was to get furs off of fools. And then later on the documentary, they're watching it, and it confirms that, in fact, he did have a big tattoo on his back. And he did have a tool associated with him, and they weren't sure of the purpose. They thought maybe it was ceremonial.
Of course they did.
But they also said that he probably died because he wasn't well equipped for living in such a cold climate. And if he had been wearing furs that might have been appropriate, he probably would have survived.
Funny.
We do see a skull, an image of the skull on screen, and it looks pretty Paleolithic. It looks Pleistocene, very robust eyebrow, but it does have a distinct chin, which suggests it's a modern human.
Yeah, we can't see Robin's chin because it's under his beard.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another reason why he has a beard.
I think that's a good style choice,
yeah.
Oh, we also have some other stuff about his relationship to the moon and space, because he's obviously really interested in the moon in the episode we're talking about here. But later on, Mike has a throwaway line about something not getting done. He's like, we can't do this, but we can put a man on the moon. And then several of the ghosts are like, what? Man on the moon? And Robin in particular is really impressed, and he doesn't believe this. So they go to the computer that folds, and Allison pulls up some YouTube videos showing the moon landing, and they're all pretty astounded. And then all the rest of them sort of lose interest and move on right away. But Robin is so enthralled because of his relationship with the moon. But then YouTube keeps autoplaying, and it gets to moon landing denial videos, and eventually to JFK denial videos. And so he gets conspiracy pilled over it.
That was a great episode.
And then in another episode, we learn that, of course, Robin has been there longer than anybody else. And what happens is the ghosts have the ability eventually to move on to the next level, and nobody really knows why. And so they're talking about what happens when ghosts move on, and Robin seems really blasé about it. And they're like, you should really be, more concerned about this. And he's like, I've been here for so long, I can't do this every time. And he says what he does is every time a ghost moves on, he loses a friend, he gives them a star in the sky. And so every ghost he's ever known has one special star.
Aww.
No. That's very Robin.
It's very sweet. Robin is, he's played for laughs and he's goofy, but he's like widely recognized on the internet as probably the wisest and smartest of the characters.
Yeah.
Despite his grasp of English.
But he's been there the whole time, just watching and learning everything, right?
That's it. He's got thousands of years worth of accumulated knowledge.
What was that show that it was for this, right? Where we watched a movie and this guy was time traveling and they were like, so you're an expert in biology? And he's like, well, I'm an expert in biology in 1642, not today's biology. Was that this? We watched that for this, right?
That was The Man from Earth. I don't know if Ross was there for that one. I think we had my friend Paige Predrag Radovich was a guest on that episode. That was a good episode. There's a sequel to it, The Man from Earth Holocene. Maybe we can do that one sometime.
Yeah. I kind of just want to get home and keep watching the show.
Yeah, like I said, we literally watched the last episode last night. I mean, it's got 5 seasons, but it's British, so there's only 6 episodes per season, so you can go through it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Quality, not quantity, guys. You could learn from that.
That's true, though.
Yeah, it's true.
I haven't ventured into the American version. I mean, so often that happens, like a really good British sitcom. They say, oh yeah, we can't have people with British accents and British faces on American TV. We'll have to do a remake. And it's just dire.
I think the problem is you can't make enough money from 6 episodes a season. You have to do 10 seasons with 25 episodes a season to make money in America.
But did you guys watch the show episodes with Joey?
Yes.
Yeah, I like
I really liked that.
Yeah.
I thought it was good.
Where they take that job and then they have to write 25 episodes and they're like, what do you mean? We usually write 6.
It's very meta, that, with Tamsin Gregg and Stephen Mangan. But the only kind of sitcom I can think of that it's worked really is the Office, where the US version, I think it's still going. They're still milking that one, but it's doing pretty good.
They made an Australian one. I haven't watched it. My friend who loves The Office, watched it. Yeah, okay. He said it was the worst thing he's ever seen. So I don't know. I haven't watched it.
We maybe need a guinea pig to watch the American version of Ghosts and see whether it's worth it.
Well, unfortunately, they don't have a caveman in it there because they don't have anybody that old. So they have a Viking.
Okay.
Which, I want to figure out. Maybe there's something for me to talk about with my archaeology and popular culture class, because that's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Vikings never set foot on American soil. Vikings only, as far as we know, landed in Canada. But there are conspiracy theories about Vikings. Not in the United States of America. There's, that's where the show is set, right? So having not seen it, I assume they're not in Newfoundland, Canada. But there's conspiracy theories that Vikings settled in Minnesota. They traveled up the Great Lakes and settled all around Minnesota. And there's all kinds of archaeological evidence. And of course, the actual European people that settled in Minnesota were Scandinavian people. And so it's this idea, the cultural idea, where you have this something that's supposed to be real, but when you look into it, it's like, oh, obviously this is stemming from cultural mythology that you guys are making up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
is there a Native American ghost in the US
there
version?
is, I believe, and I don't know which one is, if the Native American or the Viking is older, having not seen the show.
Trying to think whether that could potentially be more offensive or less offensive.
Yeah, I don't know. Depends on how it's done.
It's not very respectful of Native beliefs, but is at least acknowledging that they were there well before the Vikings.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, when it comes to ghosts, I would say one of the best things we've ever reviewed. I think we all agree on this. This show is excellent.
Yes.
Yeah. I would put it up there with Encino Man.
The caveman Robin, they play into stereotypes heavily, but they also subvert them by making him really smart. They have him playing chess and crossword puzzles and just really wise because of his years. So I think that's a pretty good balance.
But also talking about bums, like that's one of his favorite things.
Always talking about bums, yeah. Do you have questions, comments, or movie requests? We want to hear from you. Find us on Blue Sky and Facebook at SOTSA Podcast. Send us an email to screensofthestonage@gmail.com or visit our website at screensofthestoneage.com.